Hey there, it's Brian Sebastian, movie reviews and more, worldwide TV entertainment, womenontv.tv, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, and on our platforms around the world, Amazon, Pandora, everything. So I always do this one as a special thing because if you march in the world of drum and bugle corps, I always call it when we used to march or when we marched. So for this, we've never met before, but I've known of his work. All right, so Jim, who are you and where are you coming from?
Sure. So my name is Jim Messina. I live in Wayne, New Jersey, but you want to know probably a little bit more about my drum corps background, I guess, or when we march, don't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about
Yeah. So
what
I
brought you
marched.
into the world of drum corps? How did that start for you?
Sure. So my dad was a really good trumpet player, played in the big bands, played with Glenn Miller back in the day, believe it or not. So he was a really top flight trumpet player. And he got me involved very early to play the trumpet. And I really enjoyed it. They took me to a parade in town. And I saw the Garfield cadets come marching down the street, and I looked up and I looked up at my parents. I was like 8 years old at the time. I said, I want to do that, right? So I practiced a little bit harder, and then I saw the muchachos. I said, I want to join them, but my mom said, no, you're going to join the St. Brendan cadets because they're right here in town. So it's a little corps. I joined them. I marched there for 2 years. They broke up, and I had become very good friends with a member of the cadets, and we ended up I went over there and I joined there. So I marched there for 7 years, became drum major in my last couple of years.
What years was that?
That was 67 to 73. And I ended up playing some solos, and then it made me drum major. So I was a decent player. You know, I'm not gonna brag about being a great player. But when you come out front and play solos, that means you're one of the best in your section at the very least. Am I right? So I aged out in 73. Age out, for those who don't know, back then it was 21. You could be 21 years old, but not any older in the junior corps. And so I aged out, and it was time to move on. But my last 3 years with cadets, Bobby Hoffman was our show designer, and he and I became really good friends. And he got the job the year before writing the show for the Anaheim Kingsmen, who had just won the world championship. So they were quite good, to say the least. And he said, Jim, why don't you move to California? We'll go out there together. You'll teach with me. You'll take over the B Corps. I need you in town to run the marching program, because he was doing some drum corps up in Alberta, Canada on a regular basis, and had to leave for 3 weeks a month until the summer. So he basically left the visual program in my hands. And I'm just a young guy. I'm 21 years old, but that was pretty flattering, to say the least.
Wait a minute. You were 21?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When Bobby went to California, what year was that?
That was he wrote their show in 72, but he still was in 73. Excuse me, not 72. He wrote the show in 73. I aged out in 73 and moved out there to California in 74. 74 was a pretty good year for Kingsman. You know, this is hard to tell these stories without sounding like I'm bragging, and I don't want to do that.
No. This is history to me, and the reason why I always wanted to know a bunch of things like this is because the 73 Midwest Kingsman show I thought was the best show, with the ending of I forgot what was the movie that Charlton Heston was in. However, it changed, and the one that I have that I listen to all the time is not the ending that I listened to for many years. And then for people who don't remember, sometimes people would change their ending in their
shows. Oh yeah, absolutely. If the judges aren't thrilled with what you're doing at the end of the show, or you don't feel you're ending on a high note, so to speak, no pun intended, you want to have the strongest finish you can. Obviously, you need a strong opener and a strong closer to make the best impression and leave the best impression. And I think a lot of corps did rewrite the end of their show for that very reason. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I went out there in 74. We entered 23 shows that year, 23 contests. We took high marching in 21 of them. So I felt pretty good about the impact I had when I moved out to California and taught the Kingsmen. We knew how to march. That's for sure. And they knew how to play pretty well
And
too.
Kingsmen were known for their marching. For people
Oh yeah.
this day, people will talk about how Kingsmen march, and even some of the troopers and how they march. But it was the Anaheim Kingsmen that really did it for a lot of people.
You got it. So, their rifle section had that over snap, it's called, where if they're going to the left, they would snap to the right first to create an oversnap, as we called it. And it really had a really strong impact on the whole activity back in the day. So it was fun. It was a fun year. But that year ended. We ended up losing championships by 8/10, which is a pretty good year to say the least. Let me close this door so I don't hear outside noises.
But so the fun thing about that still is I still think of those early 70s and the way things were changing, because you go from 1973 not having any xylophones or marimbas to 74, everybody's got them. Because 1974 was, in my mind, was the best year ever, because people are getting away from the old VFW, almost not seeing
American Legion, yeah, right. Yeah.
And then what I remember from that, not only was Anaheim great with that, but you had Ralph Hardiman in there. You had Tom in the drum line.
Float, yep.
Those things. And then the best two cores that I ever listened to in 1974 on the albums were the Muchachos and the Kilties. And today, I still wish I could see a visual of that, because I remember sitting at, it was Mike Brown's house. I don't know how old I was, but it's 1975, and we're listening to 1974, me and George Vanderbilt. And I don't remember if he marched with the Muchachos or who it was.
Sure did, yeah. He became a roadie with
oh, you remember his name?
Oh yeah, I know him pretty well, actually. Yeah.
Well, he played this for me, and like one other person till this day. It was the loudest hornline Christmas album I've ever heard till this day. I play that 74 Kilties and Muchachos almost every day.
You were addicted, but we all went through that back in the day, listening over and over again.
Here's the one mistake that I made. I was in Madison. I just remember finals were in Madison, and I'm sure it was Jeff Keevick. And I always remembered his name. And I was doing something with the Cavaliers. I was recording. I was on the field. They let me on the field because I was a press person. And I walk by him real fast because I'm trying to get photos that no one's getting. And you could still fit in that thing. He goes, I can still fit in it. And I said, oh my God, that's Jeff Keevick. By the time I went back, he was gone. And I never got a chance to thank him for enhancing my earlier youth till this day. Because when I hear those solos that he played and 70,
oh boy,
in 75 till my nobody beats that still.
I agree, as good as it gets. Yeah. So I came home from California and I got a call from the Muchacho people, and they said, Jim, you're back in Jersey. We'd really like to have you come and teach Muchachos. I said, yeah, sure. Why not? So I did. And Frank Garris was writing the show back then, but it was a really good staff. We had Larry Kirshner writing the music. We had Jeff Kivett as the lead soloist and helping to teach the brass line. And of course, we had Dennis DeLucia doing percussion, who's as good as it gets. At that time, he was really like top shelf. You didn't get much better than Dennis back then. So I had some fun teaching Muchachos. It was a bit more of a challenge, though. Teaching the Kingsmen, those kids, all they want to do is work as hard as they can to get as good as they can. Muchachos is a whole nother story, believe it or not. They had a saying, there's magic in a uniform. They didn't like to practice hard. They put the uniform on and they knew they could be a whole lot better. But that's easy to say with brass and percussion. It's not that easy to say with marching in the visual package, because that takes a whole lot more work. It really does. So it was my job to get them to realize that and to get to that next level. You want to be good in the DCI world. You can't just be a good brass player and a good percussionist. You've got to be able to march too. So I worked hard to get them to march. And then about a third of the way through the season, I went to Mac, who was the corps director, and I said, listen, I got a friend in California and I want him to come out here and help teach the corps. And sure enough, Charlie Grove, he got on a plane, he moved in with me in my house, and he helped me teach the Hawthorne Muchachos, and we got them to march, and we got them to march really, really well. It ended up being such a progression from start of the season to the end of the season from a visual standpoint that it was a rewarding feeling. Let me show you a quick picture.
Is that also the year were they playing Pines of Rome? Was that year?
Yeah. So take a look. You see this picture right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that. That was the first drill I ever wrote for a top-notch drum corps, was the Pines of Rome drill. The drill that was written for it just wasn't working. And I show up at a staff meeting and I got all my big charts, and I said, guys, I wrote a drill for Pines of Rome. Take a look at it and see. Now I was kind of stepping on Frank's toes there. God rest his soul. It just passed away recently, Frank Garris. But
Wow.
Even he looked at it, he said, Jim, let's do it. So I ended up writing and teaching the Pines of Rome drill to the Muchachos that year. And we ended up performing that pretty well, I must say. It took off. It was very well accepted from a judging standpoint. And well, it was a fun year that they could play. That brass line just they blew my socks off night after night. They were just so strong and so good.
Do you remember being at the first show at the New London Surfers Memorial Day weekend? We always kicked off the first show of the drum corps season.
I wrote the show for a few years, the New London Surfers. I went up and taught them for a while.
That's why I remembered you, because I was there in 1975 to 77. I didn't do the 78 show because I saw things changing. Everybody either went to 27th or North Star or Madison at that point.
Yeah, 75, I did the show. I was up there every week. Yeah, I'd go up midweek. We practiced in the
Coast Guard Academy.
Yeah, Coast Guard Academy Fieldhouse. Yeah,
that's why I remembered you.
That's why you remember me.
My uncle was Dane Sebastian. He was the snare drummer. My other uncle was Dale Williams. He played in the Contra.
Okay.
So if you remember, I don't know if you remember this. We had a white Dale Williams and we had a black Dale Williams.
Yeah. So what was the corps director's name back then? You remember?
Mike Brown.
Yeah, Mike Brown. So Gina Lovis, who was a great rifle in the cadets with me, I hired her to come on board and do the guard. So we used to go up there every week. In midweek, I think Wednesdays, we would go up and teach the corps. We'd stay at Mike's house because it's a long drive. It's like 2.5 hours. So we'd stay over and drive home the next day. But it was fun. It was a fun little corps to teach. They were receptive to us, and I enjoyed it.
Let me ask you this. What happened to the Muchachos in 1975? Because did they get disqualified that year?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So we're doing prelims, and standing on the back sideline are the brass from DCI and the director from another corps. And I don't want to get into names, but anyway, they asked the director for proof and birth certificates, and they did find that we had some overage kids in the corps. So unfortunately, we got disqualified and could not compete in finals. We did our prelim show. There's rumors that we won. Who knows? Nobody. There are people that know the truth, but the rest of it is just rumors. That we actually win prelims, we don't know. But I know damn well we put on a hell of a show, and it had to be top 2 at the very worst. So
exactly.
It was really discouraging that they didn't let us go on for finals. But rules are rules, and yeah, we had some overage kids. We did. But
here's what I've talked to a lot of people about going from that area throughout. Lots of people did based on when they were born, based on whenever they turned 21 or 22. You have to make that clear, because I know we probably had some too, based on when you were born. That's what it fell to. So what do you do with your kid? You're marching, you're doing what you want to do. If your birthday's in August and all of a sudden you turn 22, what are you supposed to do? Not march? I mean, you do that, That's just what we found out through all the years. But that doesn't take away from that great corps, because at that point, for the audience that doesn't know, Muchachos, you guys were going to be the first East Coast corps to win DCI. That's how that was back in that day.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Yeah. So it turned out to be a sad ending to a really fun year because the court just improved so much. By the time we got to CYO Nationals, they were humming along. They were cranking really strong. So it would have been probably a really good ending to a great year, but it's fortunately a little sad.
Let me ask you this. Do you
Yeah.
know if anybody has recordings of the full core that anybody's been able to find out of that 75 season or even the 74 season any place hidden in their basement or whatever?
Oh, I'm sure there are people that do. But then again, they didn't make albums until, championships, right? So
Yes and no, because remember, I have the 1973 Kingsman, the Midwest show. That's
yeah, right.
I always know. And then when someone sent me 2 years ago, I was always asking for 74 Kilties and Muchachos. I was always asking for that, whether it was I forgot who the record company was at that point. I was always asking for years, right up until a couple years ago. No one could say there's not any. I'm like, yes, there is. I've seen it. And I used to have it. So it's out there. You can't tell me it disappeared all of a sudden. And then obviously as social media starts to take off, as you know, the last 4 years, specifically on Facebook, more people are coming out. And it's good to see the people that we marched against because I didn't know that you taught us. And I just remembered your name. And I'm like, now I remember that. When you were talking about Muchachos, like, I got to hear the story, first of all, because they were such a great core. And I was just like, my mouth would drop when I would see that drum line.
Yeah.
The rifles, they were just like, these guys were God at that point.
So good. So good. Yeah. You know what? I'll reach out to Dennis DeLucia. He'll know if there's recordings available of the 74 or 75 show is what you want. Yes. Yeah.
You go to 1976. Where do you go from there?
So we're done with Muchachos, and Dennis DeLucia gets the job and Bobby Hoffman moved back to New Jersey, and they're going to take over the whole Bridgman program. So come on, Jim, we need somebody to run the marching program on the field, not just, they'll write it, but I'll teach it. So I went down the road and did Bridgman in 76, which was when we changed to the banana uniforms, the crazy costumes. And one of my most memorable evenings in my whole drum corps career was being down at Bayonne High School Stadium, packed to the gills, not a seat anywhere, both front and back, and watching the crowd reaction to when the Bridgman came out in that new wacky uniform. It was just people's eyes the jaws were dropping. What is this? They looked nothing like anything that had ever been on the field before. And we had a ragtag group there. They were not the most talented drum corps in the world, but we had a very successful season overall. We made the biggest jump from prelims to finals any drum corps has ever done. We went from 12th to 9th, I think. You can look that up and find out what it was, but we went up 3 or 4 places. We actually got a 10 in a general effects score, the 10 out of 10. Wow. Because that's when we created the fall down. I don't know if you were there.
Oh no, I was there. I remember seeing that in Denver, Colorado, and I remember seeing medics kind of run out and then like, no, there's nothing wrong with him.
So one of the contrabass players, he comes to the staff at a rehearsal right before championships, and he says, how about if we do this? How about after we release the last note, we all just collapse on the field? Well, we looked at each other. We said, what the hell? Let's give it a try. So we did it, and obviously the crowd went nuts. But that was just part of that whole scenario of the whole. Bridgman added an element to drum corps that really didn't exist, an emotion called fun, humor. We added humor to drum corps, and it elevated the entertainment level so much because we all want to laugh. Let's face it. We don't just want to be impressed by precision. We don't just want to be impressed by, volume. Adding humor to it lends itself really well to a whole nother dimension. And it seemed like it took off pretty well and was well received.
Talk about what was the idea, say in winter camp when you're coming up with the new uniforms? How did that go?
Yeah, I can remember that moment pretty well too. So we were getting together at Dennis Lucia's house on a regular basis, who, by the way, was selling uniforms at the time. So, and I ended up working for him with that uniform company, Collins Uniform Company in Union, New Jersey. Not that that's important. I don't think they're around anymore. But anyway, we were going through sketches, just, sketches on paper, and then getting samples made, looking at the samples ourselves in the living room, and me or somebody else would put one of them on, and we'd all look at it. And then we're in the gymnasium at in Bayonne at I forget the name of the church. Anyway, the church that where Bridgman are from. It's funny how your memory plays tricks on you, right? Anyway, we're down there, and we bring out 3 versions of the uniform. The kids are seeing it for the first time, and they had no idea. Keep in mind, they had always had a cadet style uniform, a military West Point style uniform, like so many drum corps did. It was just their colors. They had the gold and the black. So we bring out a uniform that has pink and yellow and orange and all these really ridiculous colors. I'm saying ridiculous. They were just so extreme and so different from the norm. Let's put it that way. And the kids did not buy in at all. I mean, they were just, I'm not wearing that. You got to be kidding me. The reactions were, well, typical, I mean, you're coming from a military style uniform, and now you're going to this costume. So we did variations on it, and then brought it back to their colors, right? And then we added some the lines in the front, the black lines in the front. Then we added that hat, which is I don't know, what do you want to call it?
That was a classic hat. Great hat.
Oh yeah. We went through so many hats before we came up with one that we all agreed on and went well with that coat. But trust me, that was a process to come up with a final design on that uniform and get the kids to buy in as well. Because don't forget, you have to have something that's going to attract other kids from the drum corps to come and join yours, right? You have to have kids look at it and say, I want to do that. I want to be in that. I want to join that drum corps. Yeah. So we ended up coming up with I think a uniform, outfit, costume, whatever you want to call it. Now drum corps wear costumes now, basically. But back then, that was the first real divergence from a uniform to something that was a little more costume-like. And of course, we added a lot of theatrics, and like I said before, we added some humor to the activity, and it was a whole lot of fun. It really was. Yeah.
So after this, and I just thought about this. So you go from the Muchachos 75, yeah, and then you go to the Bridgman 76. So what happens to the Bridgman after finals? Because they had little issues there too, but they were a great corps.
Well, that wasn't that year. They didn't have age issues that year. They had some age issues. I think 78 was Denver 78.
I think so. Yeah. Yes, it was.
Yeah. So my very dear friend Gregory Pitch, who I'm going to have dinner with in about an hour, who taught with me down at Bayonne and marched with me at Cadets, is the one that got me to join Cadets. So they challenged the whole overage thing. They got a local attorney in Colorado, and they won their case. Apparently, the age thing that you referred to before about what day were you born within that year, and did you age out? If you age out in the middle of the season, are you really aging out? Or, whatever the dating system was, however it was set up, they won, and they went on in finals, and they did pretty well. And they, that was 76 when I taught them. They got a whole lot better, 77, 78 through the early 80s. The Bridgman, very, very competitive. They got the best drum score ever given out to any drum corps. Yeah. So they got their act together big time. Yeah, they really did. I didn't stay on there, but it was a really fun year.
After you left Bridgman, what did you do after that?
So, life sometimes get in the way of things. So I started a business. I bought a record store, an audio equipment store, because I'd always been an audiophile. So that takes up, if you're in retail, it consumes a lot of time. But then I got into judging, and I immediately started getting big because of my teaching background. I immediately got really great gigs. After my first year of judging, I sold the store, by the way, and I got a for real job. I was selling. So I got Southern Tour 8 years in a row, which is a pretty big gig to get. And I started doing all the regionals. I was brought in for a championships week, either Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. 14 out of my 23 years of judging. So,
Wow.
yeah, I was a G visual guy. That was my thing because I always found it easy to react and not just be analytical. Because if you're the show writer, you don't just want analytical commentary. You want reactive commentary, not just analytical. So I made it my point to have fun when I was judging a show. If they were doing something great, I would always react emotionally and not just, be this, monotone analytical person. So I got into judging. It was really tough to give up. I did it until 2003. I started judging in 70.
Wow.
7 or 8. Yeah. So when I stopped teaching Bridgman, I did a couple of shows just experiment wise. It's saying low battery. Let me plug the wire in. You can still hear me, right, Brian?
I can still hear you. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So I did some shows in 77, just experimenting, and immediately I got put on tour in 78. And I think by 79, I was already doing some regionals.
So here's the thing about judging that I didn't know. You knew they were highly respected, and you also knew that was probably a good gig. So for you to have that and be that judge for a long time, does that take off less wear and tear on you because you're in one place for a couple of days? Is that right or no?
That is a very good question and a very good analysis. Let me tell you the difference. When you're teaching a drum corps, you're traveling in a bus or a motorhome or a van. The corps is sleeping on gym floors. Okay, yeah. Sometimes the staff gets a hotel room, but when you're judging, you fly. There's someone to pick you up at the airport. They take you to dinner. You stay in a hotel. They take you back to the airport in the morning. So it's a lot of flights. And it was 9/11 that changed my opinion on judging. So that was 01, 9/11. I stopped judging in 03 simply because flying just became a lot of work. And you on average, you're taking 2 flights a day, sometimes 3 or 4, because small towns, there's no direct flights from New York to, I don't know, Dubuque, Iowa, or something like that. You have to take a lot of connections. You get onto a lot of smaller planes, a lot of small commuter flights. But the lifestyle is definitely a big step up from teaching. So, and not that you're not doing it for the money. At least I was never doing it for the money. I was doing it because I love drum corps, and they're paying me to sit in the best seat in the house. I'm at the top. I'm in the press box on the 50-yard line. Come on, if you're a drum corps fan, which I certainly am, it's like they're going to pay me to sit here and watch this show and talk about it. So
no, you're absolutely right. When I moved to California in 1987, the reason why I moved to California, I originally wanted to go to Walnut Creek to be close to Santa Clara Vanguard. Yeah. I never made it up there, but I went out for radio. I ended up in, I was in Hartford, Connecticut, Hartford, New Britain, Connecticut. I was in market number 37 or 39. I was in news radio, and I was working at KISS FM during the day, and then, WPOP in New Britain, Connecticut during the day, and KISS FM early morning. And then I've done donuts. Some people didn't know that. I actually had 3 jobs. But I was always going to go to California because that was the number 2 market. But I wanted to be close to Santa Clara Vanguard so I could be with them and hang out with them. I never made it to Northern California. I ended up being in Los Angeles. And
that's such a bad thing.
No, it wasn't. But that was I was disappointed because I didn't make it up to Vanguard. I wanted to be close to them. And then so what happened was I said, okay, I'll be in Los Angeles and I'll make my way up there and then I'll come back to Los Angeles. No, I stayed in Los Angeles, and I ended up watching what was going on with the Velvet Knights and watching everybody come down from the northern shows down to Southern California because you had more shows down there. They were doing their Southern tour. And this is actually better because you could see everybody coming up, and you had 13 shows. Now they only have 2 or 3 if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
How times have changed. But it was one of those things where I always made sure I went to go pay homage to my lovely Vanguard. And I always wanted to make sure I was helping promote the kids the best that I could do, like what I'm doing now. And it was always a good thing of this is the true way of giving back because, as you said, being that drum corps nuts or drum corps nuts, this is fun. This is, and I tell
Yeah.
people when I'm interviewing celebrities, there's nothing like being in a drum and bugle corps, traveling the country as a kid, because it still is the only organization that you can actually see the country as you're performing during the hot sun during the days and that, now performing at night,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It's great. So tell me more about what this is that you're doing right now. Who does this go to? Who's going to be interested in watching us and listening to us talk?
Well, the good thing about what we're doing now is we're movie reviews and more. We have 7.3 million views a day and counting out of Franklin, Tennessee alone. So you think about the Dubuque, Iowa, the Colts out of there. Now in Franklin, Tennessee is Music City. I actually went to go see the rehearsals because I said, I want to help some of the smaller corps who might not have money or whatever, or they may need food in the future to help those kids because now it takes a lot more energy. You got to be disciplined. You got to being physical. You got to be physically fit because you're running all over the field now. So
Oh, sure.
help out in a different way by doing that. So by being with movie reviews and more, it's one of those things where we can help on the food side of stuff with the Dreamweaver Artist Ranch in Northern California and Mariposa. Or it could be like I can have someone like you on my show telling other people about where we came from, where we are today, and where we go in the future. What it was like to grow up marching as early as age 6, aging out and whatever, but going into all senior corps or all, what do they call them? All age corps now. And
Yeah,
I
right.
just want my audience to be from age 9 to 86, which is what it is. Nobody else in the world has that except for me because of the world of marching bands and the world of drum and bugle corps. So I always wanted to have that and keep that audience there because, like yourself, I forgot that you were a drill instructor. I forgot about it. I'm like, why do I know that name? But
Yeah.
got to be a great guy because he's with the Machachos, he's with the Bridgman, he's with the. You can't go wrong. Who has that history like that? Really,
Yeah.
nobody.
It's
So honored to be able to talk to you because I'm like, wow,
you.
I forgot that he taught the surfers.
Yeah, I did. I wrote your show and taught you. Oh, it's only a
My
year,
alumni
but
friends are they're gonna get a kick out of seeing this show because you just entered the world of me talking to the 7 individuals, 5 out of the 7 snare drummers from Santa Clara, getting to tell their story. They've never told their story on a show before. They did it for movie reviews and more. So with those influencers that we have, 97 million followers in our social media network, with 7.3 million views a day and counting, with 1.3 million views on our YouTube, putting all this stuff together, everybody has one spot that they can see all the stuff that we're doing. So we cover TV, radio, podcasting, and nobody is beating us in the world of what we're doing. And it all came from being in the world of drum and bugle corps. So I
wow.
always wanted to do something like this. And you know what I really wanted to do? I wanted to be the announcer at the Jump Corps show.
Yeah, you'd be great.
I always wanted to do that. And I said, you know what? He's still alive. I don't want to take a job away from him because he's doing a great job. Let me do it a different way. So this is a different way of me doing it.
Well, I'll put a good word in for you if he ever retires.
So let me ask you this. We got about 3 minutes. So what do you want your legacy to be of the stuff that you did as you were teaching, as you were marching, and when you were judging? What would you say?
Well, from the teaching standpoint, I feel very strongly that I made every corps that I taught a whole lot better from when I started with them and when we ended. And my passion for that, it created a pedigree, and I'm very proud of what the legacy I left with the kids and how a lot of them. I had a student come up to me and say, I became a band director because of the way you taught me. And that really made a big difference. By the way, I have a fundraising business now and I work with marching bands. That's what I do. Past 36 years. So I work with high school bands, helping them to raise money so they can travel and compete, do all that good stuff. Little plug, my company is called Ashley Farms Inc. So that's what I do right now. I started 36 years ago, and knock on wood, we're doing okay. We're trying to get past this whole COVID thing and survive, and we're doing okay. So what do I want to leave behind? The judging thing, some guys just get, as I referred to before, way too analytical. Have some fun with it. These kids are out there trying to entertain the audience, and we as judges should also realize that they're entertaining us, and the kids get to hear the tapes. So you don't just want to be, Donnie Downer. You want to make sure that they hear the uplifting side of the show, what's written and how it's performed, so that they get that positive feeling from it as well. So I guess I didn't think about, I had no idea what you're going to ask me the whole time. So fortunately, there's been a good repartee, a good give and take here. So I hope that answers your question.
That's the fun thing about that. It's a great answer because, again, this is one of the reasons why I have 13 co-hosts, all women, and they have no idea about the world of drum and bugle corps. They're starting to find out because if you remember Robbie Robertson, his family kind of did something with the Crossmen. They were like the founders of that in a way. He was on my Tuesday night live show last night. And now we never met, but he did a show just like this, and I put it up yesterday on my channel. He loved our Tuesday night live show because he gets a chance to talk about his Robbie Robinson music, him being that drummer, ended up being a guitar player, singer, composer, which I think is brilliant, but also being an individual snare champion. I think that's great. So now he's kind of coming to our fold. So Jim, I'm welcoming you into our fold of this because you never know how Movie Reviews and More is going to be able to help you, which what you're doing, because you helped us back in the day.
Well, thank you so much. This was a whole lot of fun, Brian. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So with this, I'm going to call it a part one, Jim, because the next time I come back on again, I'm going to bring 2 other people in, and that's going to be fun with that. And we'll reminisce about the stories. So as I leave this, because I got another show coming up, I say always, when you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. Jim Rosita, thank you for coming on. My old drill instructor, who knew?
Who knew?
Movie Reviews and More, and we will see you next